In today's podcast, I want to talk about why your autistic husband reacts so strongly to criticism. I want to try to help you understand rejection sensitivity and Cassandra Syndrome. Now, if you're a wife in a neurodiverse marriage, there is a very good chance that you already know this feeling intimately. You try to bring up something small, maybe disappointment, hurt feelings, loneliness, or frustration, and within minutes, the conversation completely collapses. Suddenly, your autistic husband is defensive. He's emotionally flooded, shutting down, spiraling into shame, insisting he's a terrible husband, or becoming angry because he feels attacked. And somehow, the original issue disappears. Now the entire conversation revolves around managing his emotional reaction instead of addressing your pain. Now, for many women experiencing Cassandra Syndrome, this becomes emotionally devastating over time because eventually you stop feeling emotionally safe enough to even speak honestly. You begin walking on eggshells, editing yourself, suppressing your needs, rehearsing conversations in your head before bringing them up, trying to predict what wording will trigger less defensiveness, and so on. And after years of this, many neurotypical wives begin feeling emotionally invisible inside the marriage. But one of the most important things to understand is this. Autistic husbands are not reacting this way because they don't love their wives. Their nervous system is interpreting relational discomfort as catastrophic rejection. That's a neurological process, not some kind of character flaw. Now, that doesn't excuse harmful behavior. I'm not saying that. It doesn't excuse emotional neglect. It doesn't excuse rage. Doesn't excuse manipulation. And it certainly doesn't mean wives should tolerate emotional abuse. But if we misunderstand what's happening neurologically, couples often keep fighting the same exhausting battles over and over again without ever addressing the actual root problem. How many more years can you allow that to go on? As a neurotypical wife, what you're witnessing is something closer to a nervous system hijack rather than intentional emotional cruelty. For many autistic husbands, criticism doesn't land as, oh, well, my wife is upset about the situation. No. His brain rapidly translates it into, oh, I failed. She's disappointed in me. She regrets this marriage. I'm unsafe. I'm fundamentally defective and flawed. And all this can happen within seconds. That's why relatively small moments can suddenly become emotionally explosive. The husband's nervous system is no longer processing the conversation calmly and logically. It's reacting as though rejection equals danger. And here's where this becomes especially painful for wives suffering from Cassandra Syndrome. You may spend years trying harder to explain yourself. Softer wording, better timing, more patience, more emotional labor, while still feeling chronically unseen. Because the issue is not always communication skill alone. The issue is that your ASD husband's nervous system may already be overwhelmed before true emotional understanding can even happen. This is why many neurotypical wives describe feeling profoundly alone in these marriages. Not because conversations never happen, but because emotional reciprocity often breaks down under pressure. The wife brings emotional pain. The husband experiences shame. The shame creates defensiveness. The defensiveness leaves the wife feeling abandoned. The abandonment increases her emotional intensity, which increases his overwhelm, and the cycle repeats over and over again. And many wives eventually begin questioning themselves. Am I just too emotional? Am I asking too much? Or why do normal conversations feel so impossible here? And why do I always end up comforting him after expressing my own pain? So those questions are incredibly common in Cassandra Syndrome. And part of healing begins when wives finally understand that these patterns are often deeply neurological. Many autistic husbands have spent their entire lives accumulating experiences of social failure, misunderstanding, criticism, rejection, confusion, and shame. And over time, the nervous system becomes hypervigilant towards disapproval. So even gentle feedback from a loving wife can unconsciously activate old survival patterns. Now again, that doesn't make your pain less valid. In fact, many wives desperately need this reminder. Understanding the neurological explanation should never erase your emotional reality. You're still allowed to feel exhausted and lonely and unmet and emotionally starved and burned out or traumatized by years of instability. Both realities can exist at the same time. Your husband may genuinely love you deeply and still have severe neurological difficulty regulating emotional feedback. So this is why emotional safety becomes so important in neurodiverse marriages. Not emotional avoidance, not pretending problems don't exist, but creating enough nervous system stability The difficult conversations no longer feel emotionally catastrophic. And this is where many couples finally begin making progress. Because instead of treating every reaction as a moral failure, they begin learning nervous system regulation strategies. For example, when the husband begins feeling flooded, he can learn to recognize, oh, my nervous system is perceiving rejection right now. That statement matters because it creates separation between the emotional reaction and objective reality. So instead of instantly spiraling into, oh, she hates me, he can learn to pause and ask, what is my wife actually trying to communicate here? That pause is neurologically powerful. Grounding techniques can also help. For example, slower breathing, taking physical pauses, orienting visually around the room, calming sensory overload, reducing physiological escalation before continuing the conversation. And wives often benefit from understanding that once the husband becomes neurologically flooded, logical explanations usually stop working temporarily. The brain is in survival mode. This is why timing, pacing, and emotional tone matter so much in neurodiverse marriages. Not because wives should walk on eggshells, but because nervous system regulation must come before productive emotional processing can happen. And over time, couples can begin reframing these moments differently. Instead of, my husband doesn't care, the wife can begin recognizing, oh, his nervous system is overwhelmed and shame activated. And for the ASD spouse, instead of thinking, there she goes again attacking me, he can learn, oh, my wife is communicating emotional pain and longing for connection. That shift changes everything because the couple slowly stops becoming enemies and starts becoming two people learning how to navigate neurological differences together. Now, this healing process is not quick, especially if the wife has been emotionally neglected for years. Many women experiencing Cassandra Syndrome carry deep grief, resentment, loneliness, and emotional trauma. And honestly, that pain deserves acknowledgement because many wives have spent years over-functioning emotionally while receiving very little co-regulation in return. But understanding the neurological component can finally help couples stop personalizing every escalation as proof the marriage is hopeless. Sometimes the nervous system itself is the battlefield. And once couples understand that, they can begin approaching these moments with more structure, more compassion, and more realistic expectations. Now, the goal isn't perfection. No. The goal is reducing emotional chaos, reducing catastrophic reactions, shame spirals, emotional abandonment, while increasing repair, emotional safety, and recovery after conflict. And for most neurodiverse couples, that becomes the turning point where the marriage finally begins stabilizing. Because when the wife no longer feels completely alone, and the husband no longer feels constantly neurologically under attack, the relationship can finally breathe again. Now, if this video resonated with your experience in a neurodiverse marriage, subscribe to the channel. And if you're a wife struggling with Cassandra Syndrome, I want you to hear this very clearly. Your emotional pain is real, your exhaustion is real, and your longing for emotional connection is deeply valid. And you are definitely not alone. Please comment. I will read and respond to your comment. I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, this is Mark. Some of you may not know that I have a lot of books on Amazon. So if you like my videos, you'll like my books. I have several for ASD spouses, for NT spouses, and for the neurodiverse couple. Underneath any of my videos, you'll see this link. Feel free to click on that link and see what's available. I'm sure you'll find something that applies to you. So if you're struggling in your neurodiverse marriage, help is available, one click away.